So I've had a few requests from individuals to give a brief walkthrough of essentially the system that I'm doing for LockdownConf. It's one of the first conferences that I'm doing digitally. Not the first, but definitely one of the first. And giving a breakdown is going to be good, obviously, for me to showcase how this is happening for those that want to try doing this themselves, as well as I'm actually going to be sending this to a couple of companies, or at least one company specifically, because their software I'd like to use in the future, but I can't at the moment due to just technical purposes and technical reasons. And I'd like for them to at least help support or help possibly get it to the point where it can. Much better software for it, but it is what it is at the moment. So yeah, let's just dive right in. Essentially, I have a gaming rig here, a gaming setup basically that is like a 1070 in it, not the most top of the line, and a system that I am going to be replacing. And then I've got all Skype on that same system. And what I'm doing is I'm basically running everything into Skype, and then from Skype into OBS. And I'm choosing OBS in this case simply because it's able to handle a lot of NDI inputs and be able to provide a decklink output to Blackmagic, which then passes to a hardware encoder. So I'm not technically doing hardware encoding on this. I'm not doing streaming from this computer. All of the streaming is being done by another device on the same network, but it's being run through SDI into that. So all the audio and video is being paired up there and being hardware encoded and send that out to YouTube. So as we see here, we've got the studio mode set up in OBS, and we have a ton of different scenes here. Now, the majority of the bottom of these are actually just input sources. And what happens in OBS is that you're able to do things like, cool, here's guest number one. Guest number one I have as a plethora of different placeholders because this conference is essentially 4 individual talks of 3 guests plus 2 MCs. What we're doing is we're doing Skype calls for each one of the panels. This way they're able to communicate back and forth with each other, send messages, send links without interacting and having anything affecting the stream, as well as Skype allows me to have an NDI out from each one of those individuals, which I can then pass in as a source directly into OBS. Anybody who does like a screen sharing on top of that as well, that will come in as another input as well without affecting any of the video from anybody else. So oftentimes you're going to see in things like Zoom or Skype normally or Google Hangouts, if you have multiple people coming in, the screen will change, or one person drops, one person comes in, the screen will change resolution. So you can't really do things like screen capture and then crop it down and whatnot. This is far more efficient, far faster, with the only caveat being the Skype logo. For whatever reason, they don't let you disable the Skype logo anymore as of several versions ago. I've put a note in for them, hey, like, remove the bloody logo from embedded into the stream. Like, it's ridiculous. Why do we have to have this? Especially with Zoom coming in as a major competitor right now. Anything they can do to make it a better quality output, especially for broadcasters, would be so much better. So essentially, we're using Skype for that. Yes, I'm dealing with the Skype logo in the bottom corner, but it is what it is. So getting back to this, in each one of these sources, I basically have a placeholder image for each one of the presenters. So in case of guest one, I know I have Luke, Andrew, Jessica, and Dewal. Each one of these individuals, we've already gone through tech checks, we've already had them come into the system, and what we're doing is, on the topmost layer here, you'll see that it's currently transparent. If I hide this, there's nothing on it. And then I also have a basic transparency or basic image here as well, just as like a placeholder in case they didn't want to have that image. But if they're on Skype, what I can do is I can select the camera guest, or guest one in this case, which is just an NDI feed. Now, you'll see that I actually have Dewal in here, the last one I was doing, but I can go in and I can select all the different NDI inputs that are here. So Skype opens up, we have a conversation, and then I can go in here and assign him to this camera. And because I have it all laid out where I know camera 1 or guest 1 is always going to be these 4 people, or one of these 4 people, camera 2 is going to be one of these 4 people, etc., etc., this gives me the opportunity to just understand who I need to assign to that. And so what I can do is, for right now, let's just say, let's add, you know what, heck with it, let's just add this camera here, just so I can act as this person. So I'm going to come up. You're going to see me pop up here probably in a second as it picks it up. Perfect. Again, it just auto did the transformation. One of the big things that the reason that I'm using OBS is scaling. That software that I was mentioning earlier doesn't scale properly. So at the moment, I have this, it's coming in. I've got the camera set to 720 just because it's got to go through the network, and I don't want my other system to be bogged down. So what I've done is, if you go into, and you'll see that's kind of slogged down on that one, under the transformation, I have a bunch of different resolutions here. So actually that is not 3792, which is probably why it jumped a bit there. But if I go to 1280 by 720, right, it's automatically scaling even though the canvas itself is 1080p around it, or 1080p 30. So I've automatically set the bounding box to 1920 by 1080, and I'm scaling it to the inner bounds. If somebody comes in and the resolution starts changing around on me, which Skype and NDI signals are known to do, they'll go from like 1080 to 720 to 640, but they'll always stay aspect ratio for all the times they can. The scaling here will mean that it will always be the 100% scale of this scene. Where that comes in handy, and why I'm doing that, is because everywhere I'm using this person or using this camera, for instance, if I have a one-up guest one, you'll see I've got a border around the outside of this one here. Now, what I've done is, let me go back and show you here, it is scaling it down to fit it, but I'm cropping the top and bottom. That top and bottom scaling, and that scaling down, if I'm using this other piece of software, it would not do this if the resolution changed. If the resolution ended up changing, the whole scale of this video would reduce down into a much smaller, and then it possibly would jump up again and whatnot. And every time it did that, I would need to go into every one of these shots. So for instance, we have the one up, we have two up, which I'm probably not in, which means I should be able to just do, let's see, Quincy, this, and say guest one, and then title for guest one. So this is now set for that. If I can switch back and forth easily to have only this one up for this one. And again, I've cropped and I've scaled. If the resolution changed in Skype or NDI, this object, or I'd need to reset all the transformations for this one as well. Same thing for the 3-up, for both, and then the 4-up as well. So again, all of this stuff, I'm using the source, and you'll see here guest one. So guest one being a source, I know that it's always going to be consistent. Even in the 5-up, I'm able to have all of these things all laid out. And every one of these shots is dependent upon that single one scene, this single one source with a full screen video. If I go and I hide this and I say, you know what, let's do the profile pic, well, that's the thing that's coming in here, and it is scaling up. And then each one of these is kind of designed towards doing the proper scaling. However, if you do take a look, obviously something like this with the image that was provided, if I go into something like a one-up guest, there is a square around the outside of this. It's just the way that the image is. It's a transparent image they provided. I'm not scaling this up. I'm just maintaining that. But nonetheless, if I go in here and I re-enable the camera, that's the camera. So how I've built this. Essentially what I've done is I have several different videos in here, one obviously being this background image, which you can see here under blank and idle. So intro, there's a second one that's called bumpers. This bumper one is just a simple animation that is done in ProRes. The ProRes comes in, plays nice, buttery smooth, very little impact on the CPU itself, so this is why I'm doing this. I've just got basically two things in. But then I also have a slideshow. Now the slideshow, super simple to take a look at. Again, rotating slides. All it is just a single rotating slides source here under that one scene, and then I'm putting it into another one here. It's a bit redundant, not really needed, but because I'm having every one of my scenes have it so that each each type of thing is a scene, and then I'm importing a scene, it gives me the option of doing different sources. So this is why I'm doing this one here, and it's just a folder of PNG files that I have that are overlaid over top of a background of the background layer, and the bottom overlays as well, because the bottom overlays is something that does change depending upon which layout it is. So that's the way that those are laid out. Things like screen. So I technically have two ones here that are going to be screen only, which generally have a screen in the background and then a one up. So if I go into screen, if somebody goes ahead and shares their screen with me, again on Skype, it will end up being one of the sources that is available in here. It'll say Skype coming in, and it's going to be the graphics. If, however, I don't have that and I just have a different NDI source, such as another computer, this is the way that that screen would come in, and then what I can do is, again, because it's just a source, I can bring that in to different types of layouts. And again, if I didn't want to have Quincy down here, I could probably just put myself down here, and now I'm, again, scaled, cropped down exactly as I needed to be. And now this person can go in there and be scrolling their document and doing whatever, and it's coming in as basically a raw filtered 1080p version of their screen. Super simple, super clean, super effective to do, and it allows me to build out this template so that even if I'm only doing, well, even if I'm doing this live, all of the people that are coming in, oh cool, let me just share my screen, and they share their screen, and it's instantly available to me. I'm able to pull it up really, really quickly, and it applies and affects all the different things. Now, the other piece of software absolutely can generally do layering, because that's the way it's built with layers, but the problem there is that the scaling wouldn't work. I would have to reset every time you had different scaling, because the templates aren't followed. So this is why I'm using this. The other reason is because although Skype works really well with NDI out, and this other software does work with NDI out, again, I keep mentioning this because I'm sending this to them as well, the CPU load of this running and Skype running is far too much. It actually takes out even this system. But if you take a look down here, OBS is using about 10% of the CPU on this load right now, even though I'm doing output of the screen. I'm actually outputting this as well over as an NDI source. I'm importing multiple sources from other computers. This system's doing a lot, and if I'm looking down at my CPU, which I'm actually doing through Stream Deck, you can see that until I brought this up, it's hovering around 30 some odd % for the most part. The peaks are when I'm moving this around or if I'm doing anything with it. That's another big thing on this. I actually have the majority of these scenes, at least the ones that are applicable, set to be buttons. So if I go pair, right? So I've actually got two pairs. If I wanted to have a conversation between two people and then maybe go back and forth, I can have two pairs. I've got a triple up, two different triple ups as well. Same thing, there's an A and there's a B. I've got them in the scene, you can see in the bottom left hand corner here. And then I have my singles. Each one of my singles up as well. These singles just give me super quick access to being able to assign people to different shots. Obviously my screens, my idle screen, which will actually be going to be run between talks as well as the front. Again, super quick access. And then probably the one that's going to be used the most, Penta shot. Where you have all 5 people on screen all at the same time. One of the big things I'm probably going to be using for the majority. So yeah, this gives me access to that, and at the moment, OBS works best with Stream Deck. 100%, hands down. We're one of the first ones in here, and it's basically designed for OBS. OBS is just, it works so well with it. And I've got a whole screen basically dedicated to this event. Obviously, with even the same brands and stuff like that, I've been able to do the graphs for it. Yeah, so that's a quick overview of a lot of this stuff. Things like audio. Audio is an interesting one. It's always an interesting one for everything. In order to get the audio working for this event, I know it's going to come up. Mix minusing is very weird when you're talking Skype NDI. Generally speaking, the NDI signal comes through the video signal. However, I've noticed in the latest version of NDI and Skype that there is no audio feed that's coming in from those video sources. At least that I've seen in my initial testing here. It probably is, because that'd be stupid of them to take that out. But in order to get the audio in for all 5 presenters and not have me, what I'm going to be doing is running the system audio out to a mixer, right? So that probably the system audio itself is actually going to be running to just internal speakers that I have here so I can hear things. But Skype, the audio for Skype is going to be running to a rack mount mixer that I have, which I'm able to mix minus and send back to the system. And that back to the system is the key factor here. I'm actually running it from that into an audio DAC and then into the system as a separate entity itself. And then what I'm doing for my audio is I'm going to be passing my audio through just webcam speakers. Normally, obviously, with this type of situation, when I'm talking to you, I've got 2 microphones that are just to the sides of me here, which if I can probably show you here, basically just 2 microphones that I've got stereo set up here. Normally I run those if I'm just doing conference calls and whatnot. However, for tomorrow, for this event, I'm going to be doing it so that I'm never on screen. In order to do that, I need to mute everything that I have and only send audio to them, which means that I'm going to be using a completely different microphone that's not associated to this mixer. It'll sound terrible, but I don't care how I sound. I care how they sound, and I care how they look. That's the big thing for me. So yeah, that's how I'm going to be mix minusing. I'm basically just going to say, everything that I have, I'm going to output to my own speakers that are internal here, that are not associated to the mixer. Skype, I'm specifically saying output the audio into that, and then I'm not passing my audio into that mixer. And then for me, the whole time, I've got my headphones set up. My headphones will be coming out of that mixer as well, so I'll be able to hear everything that's coming out of them at the exact same time, and I'll be always monitoring my VU meters in OBS for that. Yeah, so that's the current setup. And again, it's essentially just using, if I go into here, my output, my deck link, and I would send this into a deck link output here, 1080p 30. And when I do that, I can see it on a preview monitor here on my studio, and that runs into an AJA Hilo, which AJA Hilo then passes everything to YouTube. It's a bit convoluted in that way, but I find that the output is a bit better quality this way because you're using a dedicated hardware encoder. Yeah, and because the audio is just paired directly associated to the output, I don't have to worry about audio syncing and buffer delays. So yeah, if there is any questions, comment down below, say what you need to say. Anybody who I am sending this to that does have my contact information, please feel free, don't hesitate. I am around and definitely wanting to have a conversation around this type of setup and what can be done in the future. Anyway, thanks a lot and have yourself a great day.